All right. How developers stop learning the rise of the expert beginner. We call these influencers. Oh, damn, look at this. I click one page and I'm back at the Turd Brown. We're back at Turd Brown. Let's go. Let's go, Turd Brown. All right. The rise, let's see. Beyond the Dead Sea, when good software groups go bad. Okay. I recently posted what turned out to be a pretty popular post called How to Keep Your Best Programmers, in which I described what most skilled programmers tend to want in a job and why they leave if they don't get it. Okay. I mean, that sounds like a great... I wonder if I align with that. Today, I'd like to make a post that works toward a focus on a software group at an organization rather than one on an individual journeys of developers as they move within or among organizations. This post became long enough as I was writing it that I felt I had to break it into at least 2 pieces. This is part 1. Okay. In the previous post I mentioned, I linked to Bruce Webster's Dead Sea Effect post, which describes a trend whereby the most talented developers tend to be the most marketable, and thus the ones most likely to leave for greener pastures when things go a little sour. On the other hand, the least talented developers are more likely to stay put, since they'll have a hard time convincing other companies to hire them. Damn, the Dead Sea Effect. I mean, that really is just I mean... You gotta feel at least a little bit bad about just calling a group of developers. You're like, yeah, that's the Dead Sea over there. You see those guys over there? Dead Sea, nothing living, can float a lawn chair on it. Absolutely buoyant, filled with salt, terrible. Is this me? 2X Gang, Junk Matter, my old enterprise company, gang. Yeah, this serves as an important perspective for understanding why it's common to find people with titles like super duper senior, principal fellow architect, awesome dude, who makes a lot of money and perhaps even wield a lot of authority, but aren't very good at what they do. I've worked in this. I've worked in that, and it was emotionally bruising. I just want to see somebody get on the keyboard and make something. Okay? For me, that's how I know you're a super duper principal fellow architect awesome dude, is that you can actually make something. But that perspective still focuses on the individual. It explains the group only if they assume that a bad group is the result of a number of these individuals happening to work in the same place, or possibly that conditions are so bad that they drive everyone except these people away. It's a beautiful drawing. It's a beautiful drawing right there. It's so smug. Such smug. Absolutely beautiful. I believe that there is a unique group dynamic that forms and causes the rot of software groups in a way that can't be explained by bad external decisions causing the talented developers to evaporate. Make no mistake, I believe that Bruce's Dead Sea Effect is both the catalyst for and the logical outcome of this dynamic, but I believe that some magic has to happen within the group to transmute external stupidities into internal and pervasive software group incompetence. So my personal experience with this isn't, I think I understand what's happening here, but my personal experience goes something along the lines of Technology X is really exciting. People feel very excited about Technology X. There's somebody there that's just a really slick talker that can really convince people of a position or a stance. They take Slick Talker X and they give him authority. He convinces everybody, gets the stakeholders and everything. Next thing you know, you're using new technology, whatever new technology is, and then you start building on top of it, and it causes such swirl and difficulty. And then eventually people start leaving. A good example of this really was, reactive streams? Did I get this right? I want to say I got this one correct. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not called reactive streams. Gosh, what was it called? It must not be called reactive streams. I was a contributor on it, so I know it's not. And I don't recognize any of these contributors, so it can't be that. In fact, it makes me think that there might have been some purging going on here. Anyways, gosh, what is it called? It had the word reactive in it for sure. But anyways, it was this idea that you could somehow model all of your applications like transformations and drive everything from the server with like a generalized protocol, which in some sense is not a bad idea. But the problem is that it fundamentally missteps one thing, which is that the server should just drive the app completely, as opposed to just having like the app have this super complicated front end in which is driven by this knowledge on the back end. And it just kept going, and I spent so much time on it, and so many people spend so much time on it. And then people stopped wanting to work. This was a Netflixism, by the way. And people just stopped wanting to work on it. And it's all because one person could convince everybody how important it is to have back pressure and reactivity and all the fancy words. So I've seen the Dead Sea effect. In the next post, let's see. In the next post in the series, I'm going to describe the mechanism by which some software groups tend toward dysfunction and professional toxicity. In this post, I'm going to set the stage by describing how individuals opt into permanent mediocrity and reap the rewards for doing so. Learning to bowl. Before I got to any of that, I'd like to treat you with a history of my bowling game. Yes, I'm serious. I'm a fairly athletic person. Doubt. You can't just call yourself I'm pretty athletic. I got a touch of athleticism. Growing up, I was picked at least in the top third or so of any people for any sport or game that was being played. Damn, kids regaling us with the grade school antics right there. No matter what it was, I was a jack of all trades and a master of none. This inspired me in a sort of a mildly inappropriate feeling of entitlement to skill without a lot of effort. And so it went when I became a bowler. Most people who bowl put the thumb and 2 fingers in the ball and carefully cultivate tossing the ball. Okay, before he keeps on going, I already know where this is going. He only puts 2 fingers in and gives it some spin, baby. That's what I do, of course. I feel akin to this article so far right here. And carefully cultivate tossing the bowling ball in a pattern that causes the ball to start wide and hook into the middle. With no patience for learning, I discovered that I could do a pretty good job by faking it by putting no fingers and thumbs in the ball and kind of twisting my elbow and chucking the ball down the lane. Let's go bowling at our next terminal stop meetup, and the entire thing like losers. Let's do it. Palming a pink 8-pounder and throwing it. Dude, that's me. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. It actually worked pretty well the more I bowled. And when I started to play in an after-work league for fun, my average really started to shoot up. I wasn't the best in the league by any stretch. There were several bowlers, including my former manager of mine, who averaged between 170 and 200. But I rocketed past 130, 140, and all the way up to 160 range within a few months of playing. Not too shabby. But then a strange thing happened. I stopped improving. Right about 160, I topped out. I asked my old manager what I could do to get back on track with improvement, and he said something very interesting to me. Paraphrasing, he said something like this: there's nothing you can do to improve as long as you keep bowling like that. You've maxed out. If you want to get better, you're going to have to learn to bowl properly. You need a different ball, a different style of throwing it, and you need to put fingers in it like a big boy. I'm sure there's a "that's what she said" joke somewhere within this statement. And the worst part is that you're going to get way worse before you get better, and it will be a good bit of time before you get back and surpass your current average. Hey, let's go bowling. I resisted this for a while, but got bored. By the way, this is such a good piece of advice. There's like all these things you have to do. Like there's a bunch of naturally talented people that get good at specific, like very high touch activities. Bowling, I'd put it in a high touch activity, just like golf. Like golf is something that you just have to swing 10,000 times to be okay at golf. You have to swing another 10,000 times just to be mediocre at golf, right? To be great at golf, you have to swing like 10,000 times a year, every year for like the next 20 years. It's crazy how hard it is to be good at golf. And so it's like, I totally get this. Like you can go in there and have a bit of natural talent, but the moment you want to go from natural talent to great, you have to like conform, into a certain pattern of play. You got to just put your fingers in it like a big boy. I resisted this for a while, but I got bored with my lack of improvement and stagnation, a personal trait of mine. I absolutely need to be working toward mastery or I go insane. Feel that. I feel that hard. I feel that. My little kids are playing in the shop, so I can hear them playing out there. Golf is a sport for old people. Golf is hard, and I resigned myself to the harder course. I bought a bowling ball, had it custom drilled, and started to bowl properly. Ironically, I left that job almost immediately after doing that, having bowled probably 8 times in the year since. But not only did he get all the stuff all set up to be that, he then leaves the job, which by leaving the job also breaks up with the activity. That's pretty funny. I don't know what sieste la vie means, I suppose. When I do go, I never have to rent bowling shoes or sift through the alley balls for one that fit my fingers. Dreyfus, rapid returns, and arrested development. In 1980, a couple of brothers with the last name of Dreyfus proposed a model of skill acquisition that had gone on to have a fair bit of influence on discussing about learning, process, and practice. Later on, it would go to a published book based on this paper, and that book would refine the model a bit to its current form, as shown on Wikipedia. The model lists five phases of skill acquisition: novice, advanced beginner, competent, proficient, expert. There's obviously a lot to it, since it takes an entire book to describe it, but the gist of the skill acquirers move from dogmatic following of the rules and lack of big picture to intuitive transcending of rules and complete understanding of the big picture. I like that. The hidden knowledge, right? Because there's all these things that you do, like everything that you do, especially in programming, there's because this is the whole, like, it depends. This is why that statement is so frustrating, because it depends is just highlighting the fact that there's not really a concrete answer ever to anything. And so people often use that as a measurement to make shitty decisions, because you can just say it depends. It depends is the ultimate Swiss Army knife of making great and terrible decisions at the exact same time, right? And so, like, I break rules with programming, and I know that I'm breaking rules with programming. And it's for good reason, and then I often live to regret it. Like, one easy rule I have in programming is just never use the keyword extends in a language that allows for the keyword extends. And every now and then I just feel like this is the time. This is the one time that I know that extends will work in my favor. And then I use it. And so far I've lived to regret it every single time. But I feel like I can transcend the rules. And I feel like there is a time where I'm going to use extends properly, and it's going to feel so good. It's just going to feel so good. I just know it. It's going to happen. Programming foo, public bar. Programming is about compromises. It is. Composition over inheritance. I know, but there's always that one time you want it to work. There's that one time where inheritance actually seems to make sense on paper. I feel this too much. I feel this phrase too much. All things being equal, one might assume that there is some sort of natural linear advancement through these phases, like earning belts in karate or money in a corporate world. But in reality, it doesn't shake out that way, due to both perception and attitude. At the moment one starts acquiring skills, one is completely incompetent, which triggers an initial period of frustration and being stymied. Ain't that a fact? I still remember trying to understand how a class works and the amount of time I spent trying to learn how to program. It honestly I felt stupid. I felt like I wasn't capable of learning how to. I honestly felt like I wasn't capable of learning how to program. By the way, this is the craziest statement I've ever read in my entire lifetime. This is something that nobody has ever said. I don't think I've ever seen anyone say this. Single inheritance is terrible. Multiple inheritance is amazing. I don't think I've ever seen someone say that unironically. Like, I've never seen someone be like, you know what's better than single inheritance? Multiple inheritance. I wish I could get multiple inheritances. So do I. While waiting for someone like an instructor to spoon-feed process steps to the acquirer, or else, as Dreyfus put it, they, like a baby, pick up the imitation and floundering. So this is my big worry about AI. Is that AI, I think AI is going to create a generation of programmers that have learned helplessness. This dude is cooking a long time. I agree. And that's a huge internal worry of mine. And let me explain why. Is that the process of coming up with how you should solve a problem is problem solving in itself, and it's a very difficult skill to have. Your ability to see from point A to point C in a short period of time, and then not only see what you need to do, but take that and morph it into something that is an actual solution, and then turn it from your head into something that the computer can understand, is such a huge like requirement for any software engineer to get great. And so my big worry with AI is that it shortcuts that, because it allows you to bounce it off somebody that always is suggesting. You always allow yourself just to not really put in that critical thought. And I'm very worried about that. I'm a college student right now, and it's crazy how many peers seem helpless and can't problem solve. I do think that there's going to be a massive hole in the market coming up here soon. Typically, like Bob Martin talks about this. Robert Martin, Robert C. Martin, Uncle Bob, he talks about the whole, in every 5 years, the amount of software engineers doubles. And he cited this as this was something, I'm not sure if it actually has continued ad infinitum or if it will continue. Obviously, it can't keep continuing for so long. But you get the idea that every so many years, some amount of people stop and a larger amount of people join in because it's just a growing field still. So therefore, it's really easy. You know, it's probably slowed down. Let's just say that, you know, let's just say this. I think this is probably fair to say. I think it's probably fair to say that there is going to be some sort of C0 constant that are leaving and some sort of C1 that's joining, and C1 is probably going to be larger than C0. And so we're right now in a growing population, and that growing population in the next 5 years is going to become a pretty decent amount of the overall portion of software engineering, whatever that equals, right? They could be this huge chunk, and they're going to only grow up in a world in which they know AI as how they start the process of solving a problem. And this, for me, causes some pretty serious, I think, effects. Learned helplessness is such a big problem for more novice programmers already. I'm currently dealing with 2 recent hires. Both of them have an incredibly hard time without Copilot. They don't know how to use Stack Overflow to their advantage. If it's not something they can copy-paste, they deem the problem unsolvable. You know, like, I mean, I do get it. I do think there is something very magical to the process of saying, I want to build something and just hacking your way to a solution. I think there's something very, very good. Brian, tell me how to fix my learned helplessness. Dr. Drero, you gotta go ahead. Dr. Drero, you're now on the big board. Go ahead, please. Tell us how. Why is that? Why is AI the same thing as Google in the early 2000s? Fix it by putting your fingers in it like a big boy. Hey, this is a Christian stream, sir. Come on. People in the past also thought Googling will replace knowledge source. AI can't do it so as much. People in the past did not think it so at all in any sort of level as AI. I mean, that's such a silly thing. And Googling did change. I just don't think that's the case. Yeah, they did not think that. Source, I was there. I was there as well. I don't remember any of these things. Google was looked at as a way to find information faster, and that is it. Yeah. Well, yes, I mean, the whole AGI thing, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't it depend on how you use your AI tool? I still think everybody needs to take a moment and see if you have the Copilot pause. Disable Copilot, start writing code, and watch your own brain shut down, right? Watch your brain shut down and watch yourself not use your own brain, but wait on something to tell you. You generally know what you want, and so you wait. I had a strong Copilot pause, right? I had a strong one. Copilot is basically spoon feeding. It's a real thing. You like stop engaging your brain. Joke's on you. I turned off Copilot a couple hours after. Yeah, it kept pissing me off. Yeah, most of chat has regular brain lag. They don't need Copilot for that. Damn, TJ. Anyways, I mean, I loved Copilot. Don't get me wrong. I still remember the magic of it. I actually want to create a main channel video for this because I feel so passionate about this because I do think that there's a lot of promise. I don't know. Anyways, we can pick back up. I'm worried about the learned helplessness. After a relatively short phase of being a complete initiate, however, one reaches a point where the skill acquisition becomes possible as a solo activity via practice. And renewed and in vigor acquirer begins to improve quite rapidly as he or she picks up low-hanging fruit. I think this should be step 1. I don't see how this is not step 1 of program. This was my step 1. When I said I want to learn how to program, the first thing I thought about was I want to be able to build a game. And so it's like the step 1 was me getting Java applets to run in the browser. Step 2 was learning about double buffers and making up my own physics. Step 3 was actually making a small little game. Like, I don't see how this isn't step 1 of any programmer, right? Because that's the point of programming. Like, that's what I worry. So that's the whole like learned helplessness / you feel like you can only imitate. You feel like you can't find answers. You feel like all these things is because you don't have this like drive to solve the thing. Option paralysis probably. Yeah, no, but again, that's like this problem with this drive. Like option paralysis should not exist. You should just pick anything. Pick something, right? How do you just stop from copy pasting the solutions to write your own version of the game? Because there was no solutions. I wanted to write things myself. right? I want to write things myself. Once all that fruit is picked, however, the unsustainably rapid pace of improvement levels off somewhat, and further proficiency becomes relatively difficult from there forward. I've created a graph depicting this, in which actually took me an embarrassing long time because I messed around with plotting a variant of the logistic 1/1 minus x function instead of just drawing a line in paint like a normal human being. You could have just done an inverse tangent, baby. All right, look at that bad boy. All right, this is real. This time, the exact path. Okay, so someone just asked, how do I avoid just copy and pasting the solution? Right now, if you look at the Doom game, the Doom thing that we're building, I'm building out all the stuff. I'm building out our own quad trees, right? Here, our own quad trees, our own iterators, our own stride, our own everything. And why am I doing this all? I'm doing it because I wanted to do it, okay? So sure, I'm sure what we could have done is just use some sweet compression library off the shelf, thrown it into Wasm, compiled it, and called it a day. But something about that just doesn't feel cool. You know what feels cool? Going, you know what I want to do? I want to build my own Huffman. I want to be able to test out a couple ideas I have. I want to be able to do some stuff with quad trees and how to make data even smaller. I want to be able to go through everything and do that. I want to invent the wheel one more time because I like that experience. I want to learn what's underneath the hood. I want the experience of becoming good at it. So it's just so why the I think the general problem is this is kind of a cultural problem, and I think this, you can see it in how people play video games. Some people play a video game to simply beat the video game. They want to go as fast as they can from point A to point B. But beating a video game isn't necessarily the point of a video game. Not always, right? Like in the lower ones, like in Mario and stuff, that was the point. Beating the video game was the whole thing. But in these less linear ones, it's about the game itself. Like you get to go and find the things in the game. You get to like experience the game. Like that's the point, is to experience the game and eventually get to the end, right? You show up at the end looking just freaking jacked because you went around and you did all the side things, right? Zelda mentioned, exactly. The point is to enjoy the experience. And I feel like people just, they have this notion of just getting things as fast as possible and finishing every last quest quickly as possible and get to the end, do as little as, boom, move on. It's just like, that's not really the point in life. Life isn't to move as fast as possible. Life is to pick up each one of those little bits along the way. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to a game. It's not a job. It's just a hobby. Yeah, treat it like a hobby. The point of a hobby is to enjoy the activity itself, right? In this example of what for, let's see. This is an example of what, for the purposes of this post, I call arrested development. I understand the overlap with the loaded psychological or psychology term, but forget the definition on purpose here. Please. In a sense of skill acquisition, one generally realizes arrested development and remains in a static skill state due to one or two reasons: maxing out on aptitude or some kind of willingness to cease meaningful improvement. For the remainder of this post in series, let's discard the first possibility, since most professional programmers wouldn't max out at or before bare minimum competence, yes, and consider an interesting specific instance of the second, voluntarily ceasing to improve because of the belief that expert status has been reached and thus further improvement is not possible. Interesting. This opting into the indefinite mediocrity is an entry into the oblique phase in skill acquisition that I call the expert beginner. Well, this diagram is entirely too large. Okay. Expert, let's see. Novice, advanced beginner, expert beginner. Competent, proficient, expert. Oh, interesting. Okay, little side quest that you never quite got out of. Wait, where were we? The expert beginner. When you consider the Dreyfus model, you'll notice that there is a trend over time from being heavily rules-oriented and having no understanding of the big picture to being extremely intuitive and fully grasping the big picture. The advanced beginner stage is the last one in which the skill acquirer has no understanding of the big picture. As such, it's the last phase in which the acquirer might confuse himself with an expert. A competent has too much of a handle on the big picture to confuse himself with the expert. He knows what he doesn't know. Is that ever true in programming? The cul-de-sac of learning, the cul-de-sac of stupidity. This is true during the advanced beginner phase, since advanced beginners are on the unskilled end of the Dunning-Kruger effect and tend to epitomize the notion that if I don't understand it, it must be easy. As such, advanced beginners can break one of two ways. They can move on to competent and start to grasp the big picture and their place in it, or they can graduate to expert beginner by assuming that they have graduated to expert. You know what the funny part is that I fall under this category right here. Am I the advanced beginner or the expert beginner? What I mean by that is that I've programmed long enough, and I've said this phrase many times, that all problems just come down to, for loops, if statements, and variable declarations. And so it's like, yeah, I don't understand it. I don't think it's hard, though. It just takes time. Like, so any problem is overcomable. It's just a factor of how much time and effort I want to put into it. That's how I look at that, how I look at it. So does that make me an expert beginner, or does that make me competent? I have tennis elbow. Okay, thank you. Wired. 10 years of experience. I feel the same. Yeah, it's just like I've seen enough problems. Way past competent, maybe. I hope so. But it's just like you see things where, like, if you've done something enough times, you realize that it's all really the same thing over and over again. Let's see. I don't think it's hard. It does not equal I think it's easy. I think they're easy. Everything. I don't think it's hard. I don't think things are hard. I think they're just time consuming. Right? It's just you have to do, because there's not, like, let's put it this way. There's nothing hard about, like, even in differential equations in Laplace transforms, even though it'd be 3 pages of just writing, they weren't hard. They were only hard if you didn't have the foundation before that. And so it's like, there's nothing hard about it. It's just time consuming. It's just like you have to go, okay, I have to, before I learn Laplace transforms, I first need to, like, go down this whole list of things you need to do. And then finally, when you're through algebra, you're through basic calculus, you're through more advanced calculus, you're now into differential equations, you're like, oh, this actually isn't that hard because I already have all the pre-knowledge. It's pretty straightforward now. It just takes time to understand it. Yeah, that's just how I look at it. It's just like, I don't know, it just seems easy. It's just a matter of, it's just a function of time. Time, motivation, yeah. Except P versus NP. I never got to Laplace. Laplace is pretty fun. In fact, Laplace was my favorite part about differential equations. This actually isn't an immediately ridiculous as it sounds. Let's go back to my erstwhile bowling career and consider what might have happened if what might have happened had I been the only or best bowler in the alley. I would have started out doing poorly and then quickly picked up low-hanging fruit of skill acquisition to rapidly advance. Dunning-Kruger notwithstanding, I might have rationally concluded that I had a pretty good aptitude for bowling as my skill level grew quickly. And I might also have concluded somewhat rationally, if rather arrogantly, that my leveling off indicated that I have reached the pinnacle of bowling skill. After all, I don't see anyone around me that's better than me, and there must be some point of mastery, so I guess I'm there. Fair. IQ is irrelevant. Yeah, I do agree. I do completely agree with this one. That works if your IQ is high enough. I think that most people's IQ is high enough. First off, IQ is a very faulty and goofy measurement. There's few people that have true learning disabilities that actually prevent them from being able to do things. You're probably not that guy. Honestly, you're probably not that guy. You're probably not the one with a learning disability. So don't worry. That's not you. Second, it's probably going to come much more down to you desiring to learn and putting in the full-ass effort than it is going to be coming down to you physically being incapable of learning. Some coding guy, how you doing? Now, some people are just simply smarter, and they're so good at it. And it's just like, I mean, some coding guy is a great example of this. He is just super-duper smart, okay? He's just painfully smart. And there's nothing you can do about it. Stop. No, guy, you are genuinely a smart guy. Okay, guy, we worked together for many years. Okay, there's things I know. Okay, called out. You're a smart guy. No, you genuinely are a smart guy. I, like everybody else, have an IQ slightly above average. Precisely. The man understands averages now. Bruv, I beat the S&P 500 with a Tidal River. Yeah, so there you go. Some coding guy. You've just won. See, he's a smart guy. No, you are a smart guy. No, you are a smart guy. No, you hang up. Smart ass does not equal smart guy. You got him. Why is some coding guy doesn't stream anymore? He retired. I would call that more luck than smart, though. Yeah, I mean, fair. I mean, if you just invested in NVIDIA, you won. My IQ is pretty decent. I would say that don't ever worry about I think you would know if you have a true learning disability. It's probably not you. You probably, as someone who's learned how to program, you're probably capable enough to learn anything, okay? You probably have absolutely no hurdles in the way. I mean, you may have some, like I have dyslexia. I find reading to be a very difficult activity, and I can feel it. I can feel a momentum of frustration building in and out of my brain as I read. That doesn't mean that I use it as a crutch. It just means that I have to try. It just means I have to try harder. You know what I mean? The real shame of this is that a couple of inferences that aren't entirely rational lead me to the false feeling of achievement and then spur me on to opt out of further improvement. I go from optimistic self-assessment to logical fallacy as my bowling career continues. I know that I'm doing it right because as an expert, I'm pretty much doing everything right by definition. Your logical fallacy buffs, a circular reasoning begging the question. By the way, I love this line of questioning right here, of thinking about, like, it's one of the dangers of being, it's one of the dangers of being in a small pond. It's actually the reason why I went to Netflix, is because I lived and grew up in Montana. I was an excellent high-scoring, high-flying programmer at my college. I did a great job. I was one of the top. In fact, I often had my grade thrown out and then have the next grade as the curve. So I'd get like 140% on tests and things like that. Absolutely love that. And the reason why I said, okay, I think I want to try something bigger is because in my head, being in Montana and being a big fish in a little pond meant that I will only get so good so fast. And then instead, maybe I need to try I need to go to a place that has all the engineers. Am I actually good, or am I just good by existing in Montana? Which is awesome that you did that. Yeah, and then it turned out it was really good. This is not a humble brag. I know that I'm smart. Like, I don't know to what level am I smart. I'm not some super genius. I'm not John Carmack. But I'm generally a smart guy. I can remember things. I can program fast. I can type well. I can make programs, right? Like, I know that people struggle taking what's up here and putting it onto their fingers, right? I don't have that. Got to play the big leagues to really find out. Yeah, you got to play the big leagues you got to play the big leagues. It's not a humble brag. I'm not being humble here. I'm not trying to be neither humble nor prideful. I'm just telling you what I think is real. I'm just trying to be sober. It's a sober brag. So, arrogant brag. Exactly. Thank you. Jouon. Appreciate that. Primal is the humblest person to ever live in Montana. Sober flex. Let's go. Hey, bar none, I am the most humblest, #1 at the top of the humble list, people. All right. The real shame of this is that okay, by the way, I did want to say this, that really, like, you should really judge yourself soberly. Really do that. Like, if you find yourself incapable, like right now, I don't know how well I could do without an LSP, just because I rely so much navigation on that. But like, if you can't program reasonably well without just constant tool assists, maybe you need to take a bit of time and just improve your base skills, because a lot of those base skills are the things that allow you to break the rules and make larger and faster decisions. Right? I'm not saying that that's how you should live your life, is LSP-less, right? I think that's silly. Obvious LSPs are just a huge win, right? When you're in here and you want to go see the definition of done, I can just go GD and jump right to that. Like, that's very good. This is a very good thing to have on your system. Control O to jump back to from whence I came, right? Like, this is a good thing to have, and I would be foolish to think that is anything but a net positive for programmers. But the problem is that if you can't, like, just create without having the tools, there is something kind of worrying about that. And what I mean by worrying about that is that you don't actually know it. There's so much speed up that you're losing. Oh, by the way, I came up with a really great, hey, Typecraft, thanks for the raid. I appreciate that. Let's see. I did, oh my goodness, I just shouted out the wrong person. Don't dismiss, my bad on doing that one. Don't worry about that one. But I did come up with I finally feel like I've come up with the right analogy for AI in this kind of hyper tools era that we're living in. Are you guys ready for this analogy? I've been thinking so hard about it. Are you guys ready for it? Imagine you're in moderately good shape. I know half of you have already like, oh gosh, I guess not me. But you're in moderately good shape, and I could give you a wristband that you would wear, and you would become technically skilled of a blue belt jiu-jitsu wrestler. But here's the deal. You know all the moves. You could do all of that. You could, like, you understand, you have the same level of knowledge as any blue belt in the technical skill of it all. So then you go and go, oh, I can go wrestle other blue belts. You would get your ass kicked 100% of the time. And the reason why is simple, is that it's not just simply technological, like tech, you don't, just because you have the technical expertise at your fingertips doesn't mean you know how to use it. And that's, like, to me, like, the big kicker is, like, AI and some of these tools and this hyper tool experience and this expert beginner that we're in, is that you get the feeling of being a blue belt. You get the feeling of just adopting on a set of skills. And now you can move as if you have those skills, but you don't have the experience to show you how to move within those skills. Why you do certain things and don't do things. Anyways, I've been trying to figure out how to, like, name, like, create this. I've been trying to figure out how to create, like, say this AI thing that I worry about, right? Which is that I know it's not the best analogy yet. I'm still trying to workshop it, but it's that idea. It's that idea of saying that you could adopt all the technical expertise of somebody at this higher level, but you're still here. And when you attempt to use it, you can move as fast as they do, but you don't have the experience to know why you move that fast or why you make these decisions. Yeah, it does rob you of your experience. It does rob you of your experience. Anyways, looking at the graphic above, you'll notice that it depicts a state machine of the Dreyfus model as you would expect it. At each stage, one might either progress to the next one or remain in the current, with the exception of novice or advanced beginner, who I feel can't really remain at that phase without abandoning the activity. Fair. The difference is that I've added the expert beginner to the chart as well. The expert beginner has nowhere to go because progression requires an understanding that he has a lot of work to do, and that is not a readily available conclusion. You'll notice that expert beginner is positioned slightly above advanced beginner, but not on the level of competence. That is because he is not competent enough to grasp the big picture and recognize the irony of his situation, but he is slightly more competent than the advanced beginner due mainly to, well, extensive practice as a beginner. If you've ever heard the aphorism about 10 years of experience or the same year of experience 10 times, the expert beginner is the epitome, the epidome of the latter. The expert beginner has perfected the craft of bowling 160 out of 300 possible points by doing exactly the same thing week in and week out with no significant deviations from routine or desire to experiment. This is because he believes that 160 is the best possible score by virtue of the fact that he scored it. You say disagree. Oh, so that's not what the disagree is. I think I understand what he's saying here. I think I understand what this guy's saying here, which is I think you might be missing it. So advanced beginners, you're slightly more than an advanced beginner. Like some of your knowledge level is in the competent range. Some of your knowledge levels in the advanced beginner, but you don't believe there's much more expertise left. Like I think that you can actually have this line anywhere coming off of this, which is settling. Maybe a better term for this is settling. Like, I mean, I know there's some like logical bamboozling where some people just simply don't believe you can get any better, and so they fall into this. But there's also settling. Like, I got to where I want to be, and I don't want to try to get better. Right? There's also just that, whatever that is. And I think there's something up here that there is, I just stop. Right? I disagree on the last sentence. Most people are pretty good at judging how good they are. I think that I think they'll be faster to think this is their personal limit because other people have more talent. I actually disagree with that. I think people are fundamentally terrible at judging themselves. Sober judging is one of the hardest things possible to do. People overestimate or underestimate an incredible amount. There's no such thing as talent. Okay, we can't do this argument because this is the stupidest thing that has ever existed. This is a dumb phrase, Dan. And I think you're just trolling me, so we're going to move on, okay? We're going to move on because we're not going to do that, okay? For real. Talent is obvious. Contrarians in the chat, I know. Is Uncle Bob an expert beginner? No, I think Uncle Bob is an expert in his own category. It doesn't mean that his category is the most optimized. It could be. It could be, maybe we're all the ones that are wrong. That's the thing, is we could all be the ones that are wrong. I don't think we're wrong. I think he's wrong, but he's created his own category, right? Talent is real. It doesn't guarantee success. Exactly. The wisdom paradox. I know. Anyways, it's very, very interesting. Expert beginners in software. Software is unsurprisingly, not like bowling. In bowling, feedback cycles are on the order of minutes, whereas in software, feedback cycles tend to be on the order of months. Well, also, there's not an objective score. In bowling, there is literally 160 out of 300 is an objective score. Or there's no way you can interpret it that's different than what it is. 160 out of 300 is exactly that. There is no deviation from that. And what I'm talking about with software is not the feedback cycle of compile or run or unit test, which is in the minutes or seconds, but rather the project. It's during the full time. Oopsies. I realize it's too small for you guys. It's during the full time of a project that a developer gains experience writing code, controlling it, modifying it, testing it, and living with the previous design and architecture decisions during maintenance phase. I hate those phases. With everything I've just described, as a developer is lucky to have a first try of less than 6 months, which means that after 5 years in the industry, maybe they have 10 cracks at the application development. This is on average. Some will be stuck on a single one the whole time, while others have dozens. By the way, this actually is probably the greatest insight from this article that I've seen yet, which is this, like, maintenance of a large program. At least this is the take I take from this. Maintenance of a large program can be very, very detrimental to skill growth. Like, there's most certainly something that's very important about maintaining large programs, and it's more of an exercise in patience and longevity. And there's a lot of things that make you very senior about being willing to maintain larger projects and make guided changes through an already built legacy system. But there is also something that's really important about flexing your own skills in architecture and building off the cuff to build greenfield projects into maintainable larger projects. And this is you don't get this chance often. This is why I always stress personal projects, which is personal projects, you get this chance. You get the chance to build your own project. You get the chance to live with the decisions you've made. It's like democracy. You give the people what they want and you give it to them hard. Building your own project is your architecture and you get it hard. And we'll see what the ending is, right? And we'll see how well you can actually do what you're building. Manage that democracy. Manage the democracy of your own project. Personal projects, aka PP. PP is the best. Exactly. But I've also seen developers who never maintained anything beyond 2 years, which certainly affects their coding style and attitude to put in the effort for long-term sustainability. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's part of the problem of this. There's definitely two tracks here. The thing is that if you are building something for 2 years, I'd be a bit surprised if they don't have longevity in that. Right? Like, I get that if you've never built anything longer than 2 months, 3 months, you will definitely build stuff for like the faster iteration, and thus you'll build less maintainable software for sure. But I'm not sure if I buy that in the sense that people in the 2 years, like, there's definitely a phase there. But you are right, most certainly. Maintaining large projects is also a good thing. If you know the reality of India, a lot of people who are working there have decades of experience, never tried other languages, and don't even understand REST and what it is, and they are building it. Yeah, I mean, there's always, I mean, this exists. I mean, this existed at Netflix. Like, honestly, I saw this in Netflix. This happened, right? What this means is the rapid acquisition phase of a software developer, advanced beginnerism, will last for years rather than weeks. And during these years, the software developer are job hopping and earning promotions, especially these days. They are, as they breeze through the rapid acquisition. So too do they breeze through titles like software engineer 1, 2, and then maybe associate and senior, and perhaps even lead and architect and principal. So while in the throes of the Dunning-Kruger and advanced beginnerism, they are given expert-sounding titles and told they are rock stars and ninjas and whatever by recruiters, especially in tomorrow's economy. The only thing stopping them from taking the natural step into expert beginner stage is the combination of peer review and interaction with development community at large. But what happens when the advanced beginner doesn't care enough to interact with the broader community, and for whatever reason doesn't have much interaction with peers? The daily WTF is filled with such examples. Please tell me one of these is Tom. I love the daily WTF, by the way. The batch of trouble, the slowdown. Oh man, I want to read these now. Now I want to read these. They're my favorite. By the way, this guy right here, the guy that we're looking at, the daily WTF, this guy right here, I knew I recognized him. If I'm not mistaken, this guy right here also wrote about Tom the genius. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tom is the genius writer. Right, it's pretty good. They even fail while convincing that the failure is everyone else's fault. And let's see, and the nature of the game is such that blaming others is easy and handy to relieve any cognitive dissonance. By the way, you could only blame others on projects you didn't work on. If you worked on a project and it failed, eat the crow. They come to the conclusion that they've quickly reached expert status and there's nowhere left to go. They've officially become expert beginners, and they're ready to entrench themselves into some niche in an organization and collect up huge paychecks because no one around them, including them, realizes that they can do a lot better. Until next time, so we have chronicled the rise of the expert beginner, where they come from and why they stopped progressing. In the next post in the series, I'll explore the mechanics by which one or more expert beginners create degenerative situations in which they can actively cause festering and rot in the dynamics of groups that have talented members or else could otherwise be healthy. Dang, this might have to be a read at some point. I like this. This guy did a great job. Erik Dietrich. Honestly, I still think this is the best advice. Build something. Build something that is vastly outside of your expertise. Again, me trying to ascend Doom down efficiently is pretty far outside of my expertise. I have never done any of these things. I've never built quad trees. I've never done my own compression, never built a Huffman tree, never did RLE, just doing them as we speak, just guessing, trying to make things work. And it's been absolutely fantastic. And for me, it's just like I can feel that even during this, I'm becoming better at such a simple thing, which feels funny. Like, my understanding of these projects has become better. My ability at Go has vastly improved. I feel so much better at Go at the end of this than at the beginning of this. How are you able to use a mouse in Vim? I mean, it's like set up to do that with NeoVim. I don't use it except for when I'm trying to explain something, because it's easier to try to explain something with one hand than to use, Vim motions. I would say that some devs are blocked by the company they work at because they do not work on anything outside of some SaaS app. And when they go and try on their own, there's a problem of learning incorrectly. See, I just disagree with that. I simply disagree with that. Any sufficiently motivated person would get over that. I think only those that are sufficiently motivated will hurdle that problem. The first job that I worked at was horrifying, and the second job that I worked at was horrifying. And it required me to leave that horrifying area and do something, you know what I mean, and do something else. I just had to. Yes, and this is very good. This is 100. This is why I'm so adamant about side projects, is because you end up finding that you will build something, and what you think is good, you find to become you find to become so unmaintainable and so difficult to use that you actually you loathe it, and you realize that what you built is the problem, and then you want to try to then you figure it out and you fix it. Yes, CU was mentioned in that. Absolutely. Yes, but you are literally saying what I just said. You have to take ownership. You have to learn. If you expect your job to make you a good programmer, you're probably wrong. You will probably become the expert beginner if you think your job is going to make you an expert. Your job is not going to make you an expert. Most people are victims of their circumstances. I don't believe that. I don't know if that's true or false. That is such a broad statement. I will say that a lot of people are the victims in their own story, and they shouldn't do that. I doubt most are victims in their own story. I have every reason to be a victim, and I refuse to do it. At some point, you get to make your own decisions. There's definitely a birth lottery, for sure. Your intelligence is the amalgamation of your parents' intelligence. That's one of the strongest things that come down from your parents is the intelligence. At some point, you get to make your own decisions, and it's not easy. It's not easy. As someone that did sports my whole youth, I see side projects as the practice and the work as the game. Well, even this. So let me riff on this for a second. In soccer, where my kids are playing, the kids that practice outside of practice and play are the ones that are super good. The ones that play, or the ones that go to practice, have a good attitude, do a good job, and then go and play during the actual games, they're pretty good. They're not great. People that practice outside of practice and play outside of practice, those are the ones that are really good because they're playing and they're enjoying it. I live in America. Hey, I don't tell you to say, I don't tell you what to say, okay? You do what you got to do. I do what I got to do, okay? If I say the word football, no one here understands what I'm talking about, okay? We don't do that, okay? Just live in your own world and I'll live in my world, okay? This is the intersection, and you're just gonna have to figure it out, okay? Because if I were to say the term If I were to say the term football, you might actually think, is this American football? What happened if I said my kids were in American football? Then it would have been ambiguous, and you would not have known. So you can football these nuts. So suck it, okay? And by the way, America didn't come up with the term soccer, okay? The Brits did. So if you want to be upset, blame the Brits. Stop blaming us Americans for the Brits' problems, okay? We inherited the problems. The name is the Primogen.